that we would have a role in bringing the Torah into the world. And so until somebody has the question, there was never a question. And now you have to go back and figure out, okay, why do we do it like that? What's the remez in the Torah for we do it like that? Yes, everybody agrees you do it like this. But what's the proof? How do we get to the...
That's like shooting an arrow and painting a bullseye around it.
Today's daf is daf memvov, and as Hashem, we are holding exactly at the top of daf memvov. So the Gemara discussed before how the criteria by which you choose who benches, that is, who has zimun and is moitzi the other people present who's moitzi them with benching and is mezamen. Reb Zaire chulash. Reb Zaire became ill. This is Reb Zaire, for context, Reb Zaire who was originally from Bavel and later moved to Eretz Yisrael, and the Gemara famously mentions that he fasted to forget Torah's Bavel and learn Torah's Eretz Yisrael, and then later he tried to achieve greater madragis by a series of 100 days fasting, and eventually he tried to be free from the fire of Gehenna, whatever that means, and he would test himself to see whether he is immune to fire. And usually this worked, though once this failed, and it led to him being burnt. Reb Zaire Chulish, Reb Zaire became ill. Olaga by Rabbi Avia visited him. Kabul Allah, he was makabel on himself. If the small one of burnt thighs, in other words, this was Reb Zaire's nickname. Katin, he was small, and apparently Reb Zaire might not even have been his real name. Zaire is just a contraction of the word Zaire, which is also means the small one. If he heals, I will make a sida for the Rabbunan. This is the makor of the concept of promising a sida sedua. Itver, he recovered. Uvid sida selekil Rabbunan, and Rabbi Avia, as promised, made a sida for the Rabbunan. Kimuta lemishre, when it came to begin the sida. He told Reb Zaire, lishre lon mahar. Will you please begin the seder for us? In other words, you should have Berachos HaMotzi and be moitzi us with Berachos HaMotzi. And some of the Rishonim hold this is because the seder took place in Reb Zaire's house, so he was the one who should have the kibbud of making a motzi, as the Gemara will say in a minute. Sorry, no, it was not in his house, according to the Bavli. According to the Bavli. No. According to we'll see in a moment. According to the Bavli, it was not in his house. The Yerushalmi actually implies that it did take place in his house, but we see in a moment it was not. But he was the Baal HaSida, it was in his honor, so he is, in a sense, somewhat like the Baal HaBayis in this case. You don't hold Lehuda Rabbi Yochanan of what Rabbi Yochanan said, the Baal HaBayis B'tzaya, that the Baal HaBayis is the one that breaks the bread, in other words, makes hamotzi and serves the bread. Surely, so Rabbi Avia began the seder, made hamotzi. Kimutu leveriche, when it came the time to bench Berachos HaMuzin, umalai, he told him nivrich lan ma. Rabbi Avia said, now perhaps you will bench for us. Umalai lesuv lama, don't you hold lehuda Rav Hinnadim in Buvel, that which Rav Hinna from Buvel, in other words, Rav Hinna from my home country. At this point, he was in Eretz Yisrael. The Ummah B'tzaya Mevurach, who said that the B'tzaya, the one that made Hamotzi Mevurach, is the same who makes Berachos HaMuzin. So, in other words, Reb Zaire got himself out of both kibidim. The Ihi command Sviralai. What did Rabbi Avia hold? That he thought that now maybe he will accept. He held like Rabbi Yochanan B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan ben Yechui, which is actually a fuller version of the original quote from Rabbi Yochanan. Baal HaBayis B'tzaya. The Baal HaBayis is the one that makes hamotzi. And the guest is given benching. Baal HaBayis B'tzaya. Why Baal HaBayis B'tzaya? Why does he break the bread? So that he should give out bread generously. a guest will never feel comfortable slicing the bread, giving it out to the guests as generously as the balabais, because it isn't his own food. And from this lahalucha, the balabais is determined by whose food is being served. V'rayich mevorach, and the guest benches kedash yivur balabais, so that he should say the berachas balabais that Chazal were masakin and mentioning, as we'll see in a moment.
That's funny because I never, about to say this back in the day, you never saw it in the bench.
I'll get to that. I will get to that in a minute. I will get to that in a minute. I think I am contractually obligated as a temporary daf yomi magid to inform you of the very interesting machlokes which uses this gemura as a piece of evidence. There's a machlokes rishonim that was essentially discovered by a correspondence by the Aderis and Reb Chaim Berlin, who were writing to each other. They came across this machlokes rishonim, this not explicit machlokes rishonim, about whether kahanim remain kahanim after they die. There's a Ramban that says that kahanim remain kahanim after they die, and they do not need mashiach after Tchias HaMaisim. And there are other sources that imply that they do need.
That's the only Negela Maisa halacha that there is. Am I missing something?
Apparently. Well,
Not Nogeya, anything. How is it Nogeya?
it's Nagaya whether mitzvah Mashiach is a mitzvah that says in the Torah, and the Maliyim is a mitzvah that was only given l'shu, or it's an actual one of the mitzvahs. And the Aderis brought his raya from this Gemura. We see here the Gemura leaves out an entire other consideration, which I don't think is actually mentioned in Masechtas Brachos at all. There's another rule to who gets benching, a kohen. Reb Zaire, we see from many sigyas, I think especially in the Yerushalmi, was a kohen. Yet that didn't come into consideration at all. However, we know that Reb Zaire, this refers to after Reb Zaire came to Eretz Yisrael. Before Reb Zaire lived in Eretz Yisrael, he was friends with Rabbe from... Exactly. Kom Rabbe v'shachtel Reb Zaire. Rabbe killed Reb Zaire and then was Machai Meisim. Therefore, Reb Zaire wasn't the Kohen. The Aderis seriously used this as a proof, and Reb Chaim Berlin's reaction is roughly the reaction of that we elicited here. But he has other kashas, but this famously is the raya, and apparently it's a favorite of Daf Yomi Magid Shirim to mention it. Fine.
So he was a kohen before Rabbi V'Shachtel Reb Zaire,
And he was no longer a kohen.
kohen.
However, according to the Rabban, he still was a kohen, but we have to give it different explanations why this didn't come up. Halucha, there are many other factors that come into play besides for being a kohen when it comes to benching, and we almost never take it into account. Really, everyone present has to be more or less equal in chashivas for the fact that someone is a kohen to come into play as the factor determining who has benching. Otherwise, you give it to the most chushuva person there or the guest. So here we see that the Rabbi Yochanan said benching should go to the oirayich, especially as we realize until the times of the late Rishonim, the mezamen is the one that said berachas hamuzin, so he would be the only one benching, and if he didn't bench, there wouldn't be no berachas balabais. Ma'im avurach, what does he say? Actually, the Achronim ask why does it matter what he says? Really, he should be able to say whatever he wants. There's a whole discussion why they chose particularly this nisach. Yerutzen that the balabais should not be shamed in this world. A synonym. Rebbe added a longer nisach, and this is oddly specific, and again, the Achronim struggle to explain what the exact point of every part of this book is. He should be successful in all his possessions. In the Chusaini, and his properties, as Rashi says, in this case it means properties, should be mitzluchim, and they should be close to town, so that he should be able to visit them easily. And the Sultan should not have control in his actions or in his possessions or actions or ours. No hirer avayra should come before him or us forever. Many Rishonim were not goyres the part of all the Brachos for oneself in this Bracha. It was originally only for the Balabais. Later, the wording in which you include yourself in the Bracha was added later. As we know, most people don't say this. And many benches don't even have this nisach anymore. In the times of the Rishonim, we actually find that they said a composite nisach. They began with the Hurachem on Yavur's Balabais, and then they said Yerutz and Shliyavish Balabais. Eventually, the Yerutz and Shliyavish Balabais vanished entirely, and Achronim asked why. I mean, your Yoitze, the Chiyuv, the nisach of the Bucha is not Ma'akiv, but why not say the nisach that the Gemara says? And the Yavitz revived the Gemara's nisach, and recently benches finally caught on and started printing the wording of the Gemara here. The Rishonim, Rabbi Yoina seems to say that this Bucha is only meant to be said when you have a chushav guest who is a Talmud Chochem. Only then should you give the guest benching. Otherwise, it's entirely up to you, which is the Maskunas HaPoskim in general, that giving guest benching is up to the Balabais. If you really want the Bucha, you give it to them. If you don't care about the Bucha, you can keep benching for yourself. Rabbi Yoina specifically says that the Inyan is only if your guest is chushav enough that you are interested in receiving his Bucha. Which may be one reason why this disappeared. Maybe it was considered yahara to say this Bucha. Another interesting thing, which
Do you say a main to the bracha when he finishes?
That would imply that you say it out loud, which really would make sense because benching was meant to be said out loud. I was shown this a few years ago. There's an obscure cipher from Rabbi Yisrael Najara, the author of Kol Rabban, who was also a posek. He was the Ruv of Aza, back when it had a Jewish population. Aza. Oh yeah, and before he lived in Tzfas, I think. And he had a cipher on benching, and in that cipher he discusses the Birchas Balabais at length. He actually is one of the only Mefarshim that tries to give some explanation of what the intention of each part of this Bucha is. And he says that he once saw a tzaddik, he doesn't mention who, being moiche for people who say it out loud, Birchas Balabais, because benching people tend to say faster, and then it comes to the Birchas Balabais, and all of a sudden you say it out loud, and you're machabed the Balabais to show your gratitude. He compares it with a member of Rabbi Yochanan in the beginning of the Masechta. Yerutzen shei kvod shemayim aleichem k'moire b'nai Yudam, and maybe this is the reason people stopped saying it, or not specifically from his cipher, but out of this consideration.
We should say slowly every nigga.
He wrote many other Neginim. Kol Rabban, for some reason, is the only one that people remember nowadays. He wrote a whole Zmiris full of poems that he composed. Anyways, so various reasons, Lemidas Ches, why people don't say it nowadays. In any case, you're definitely Yotze with Yerutz and Shliyavish Balabais, but if someone wants to be Yotze Takunas Chazal, as they were Masakin, should probably say it, as it is written in the Gemara and as it is written in some benches. Right. For the next Gemara, small introduction. The actual translation of the next Gemara is simple. The Nafkamina Lahalucha is extremely complicated because no two Rishonim seem to agree what the Nafkamina Lahalucha is. Since Tafiyot Meshirim usually follow Rashi, I'll try to follow Rashi's explanation. But the problem in Masechtas Brachos is that Rashi usually lies completely out of the norm, Lahalucha, and the Halucha usually follows the Rif and Tosfos. So I'll try to include both Nafkaminas Lahalucha, but remember that the actual touch doesn't change that much. How far does Birchas Zimun extend? Till where is considered part of Birchas Zimun? Rav Nachman Oma, ad Nevurach, until the final Nevurach Shechal Nimishaloi. That is to say, Nevurach Shechal Nimishaloi, and the answer, and that's it. Zimun is over. and Berchas Hazan is not part of Zimun. Rav Shaish Suma, Ad Hazan, until the end of Hazan Zakod. In other words, according to Rav Shaish, Zimun and Hazan and the entire first Brucha of benching are one Brucha. We'll get to the Nafkamina in a minute. Naimeke Tanua. Perhaps this is a Machlokes Tanua. The Tuna Chude says in one Braise, Berchas Hamuzen, benching, Shnayim Ishloisha, can be 2 or 3. Again, it gets a little complicated how to translate here, but this everyone will agree on. Benching is 2 bruchas or 3. Betani idoch, and it says in another brayse, shloisha va'abu, 3 or 4. Now, we know benching has 4 bruchas. We also know that the 4th brucha has a somewhat different status than the first 3, because it was mesikin later than the other 3 bruchas. And the Gemara is going to have a discussion whether it's part of the Chiv the Reis or not at all. Zuk the Gemara. The Kila Alma Hatoiva Maitiv Lav the Reis. The 4th Brucha Hatoiva Maitiv is not the Reis. So we have benching has 3 Bruchas, in other words. Mait Labu Kemifligi. Won't you say this is the Machloikes Mando Meshtayim Veshulish Kesuva Adazon? The one that says the Braise that says that benching can have 2 or 3 Bruchas Kesuva Adazon. He holds that Zimun is up to Hazan, therefore Zimun with Hazan counts as 1 Brucha, and the next 2 count as the other 2, and sometimes we don't count Zimun. Therefore, I didn't want to get the Machlokes. First, I'm going to stick with what's agreed upon by all Mefarshim. So for sometimes we don't count Hazan, so that's 2 or 3. Noida and Rachaim, or sometimes Zimun, Noida, Rachaim. Emando Mashulish Rabu, Kusuva Ad Nevuach, and the Shitta and the Braise that says 3 or 4 holds that Zimun goes to Nevuach. So 3 or 4 means either Zimun, Hazan, Noida, Rachaim, and that would be 4, and 3 is Hazan, Noida, Rachaim. Rav Nachman Metaretz Latamai. Rav Nachman can be miyashiv both braises according to his shitta. Rav Shaish Metaretz Latamai, and Rav Shaish can do the same. Rav Nachman Metaretz Latamai, the Kilalma ad Nevuach. All braises hold that Zimun is still Nevuach, and therefore it's a separate brucha from Hazan. Mando Mashulish Vabu Shapa. The braise that holds 3 or 4 is straightforward, as we discussed. 3 without Zimun, 4 with counting Zimun as a separate brucha. Imando Meshtayim Veshulish, the Braise that says Shtayim Veshulish, Umelach Hucha Beberchis Ba'alam Maskinan. Here we are referring to a benching by day laborers, which, as we discussed before, have a shorter benching. Here we find that they have an even shorter benching than we thought. They don't only have the first 3 bruchas, their first 3 bruchas are abridged. Domama, Pesach Bazan, they begin with Hazan, the Koilul Boini Yerushalayim Beberchis Uretz. Boini Yerushalayim is included in Noida, which makes benching shorter because it's only a mention of Boini Yerushalayim in Noida L'chu. So now we have both prices according to Rav Nachman. Rav Shaish Metaretz Latamai, the Kil Alma Ad Hazan, everyone holds that Zimun extends till Hazan. Mando Meshtayim Veshulish, the shitta, the price that says 2 or 3 Shapa is fine, as we discussed. Imando Meshloish Babu, the one that says 3 or 4, Kesuva Hatoiva Maitav Deraisi. That Braise held that Hatoiva Maitav is Deraisi, and therefore it should be mentioned and counted. Therefore, 3 is Zimun. 3 would mean Noide Rachaim Hatoiva Maitav, and 4 means Zimun plus Hazan counted as 1, Noide Rachaim and Hatoiva Maitav. Now, the Nafkamin Halalucha, Rasha has the unique shitta that the Shala here is what is actually part of Zimun. Now, of course, in the times of the Gemara, the Mazaman said all of benching. So everyone was Yotze, all of benching from the Mazaman. The Nafkamin Halalucha here is what is part of Zimun, which part of benching is do you say when you have 3, and which part of benching do you not say when you do not have Zimun? According to Rasha, and I'm not sure Lahalucha what Rasha held, because the Maskuna of the Gemara will see, well, according to Rasha it's not Mechach, but we see later that the Haluchas, like Rav Shaish's, really Hazan should never be said b'yuchad. According to Rasha, a yuchad, Medina the Gemara, should say Noide L'chu, because Hazan is part of Berchas Zimun. The Rif and Tosfos learn that they agree that there is a machlokes whether zimun and hazan are part of the same brucha, but they learn that the nafkamina lahalucha is when you wait for when you're part of a group of three, and the other two begin zimun without you, as the Gemara said before, one person can wait for two to make zimun and then can continue eating. How long do you have to wait? How long do you have to wait for the mezamnim to bench until you can continue eating? You have to wait until the end of Azan Zakoil, which is lahalucha. This is what we do when you have a group of people that all of them are being yotze with zimun, but not all of them are finished eating. You wait until those benching, or the mezamen at least, reaches Hazan before continuing, and we'll see. According to Tosfos, the Gemara gets back to this discussion later. According to Tosfos, I'm not sure if the Gemara gets back to it later. According to Rasha, there's another discussion later, but we'll see. Fine. Now that we
So what's the name of Katanoi according to Tosfos?
the discussion here is according to Tosfos. There's another nafkamin lahalucha, whether it counts as one brucha or two, which is when you have a group of people in which none of them know benching perfectly, and everyone has to be yotze. Everyone knows one brucha of benching. How many bruchas can you split benching up? So if you have, let's say you don't have zimun, you have two people. How much can you split up benching? According to the Brachos is telling us, you can only split benching up into three. One person says Hazan, and the other two are yotze. One person says Noida, the other two are yotze. One person says Rachem, the other two are yotze. So the machlokes when the Brachos says two or three, that means with zimun or without. And from this we can from the machlokes between the Brachos, according to the Havamina of the Gemara, is can I split zimun from Hazan? Let's say you have someone that knows Hazan and doesn't know zimun, or knows zimun and doesn't know Hazan, whether you can split them up. Yeah. My first thought was some sort of sheva bruchas. Yeah. Every brucha to someone else. Yeah. There we hold you can do it like lechatchila, according to most poskim. Be mechaber the bruchas to different people. Here, this is only if Tosfos Akimta at least is if no one knows all of benching. But again, the underlying machlokes is, according to all shittas, are whether Hazan and zimun really count as separate bruchas or only as the introduction and the end of the same brucha. There's another shitta which has a completely different interpretation of the Gemara, but still agrees with the underlying machlokes in Pshat. Now that we discussed Atova Maita, whether it's Deraisa or not, we will see that the Gemara continues to say that, according to almost all shittas, Atova Maita is not Deraisa. Omer of Yosef, Taida Atova Maita lav Deraisa. How you should know that Atova Maita is not Deraisa. How can we see this? Sharai Pa'alim Oiker Oisa. Pa'alim, day laborers, are Oiker, remove Birchas Atova Maita. If Chazal were masakim, they shouldn't have to say it. You see, and they make no mention of it at all. You can see that it's not a chiv deraisa. And later, a few blocks later, we'll see where we learn each chiv of each brucha. Torah, at least, not necessarily to have three separate bruchas, but which subjects need to be mentioning, and Hatova Maitiv is not one of them. Umar Vitzrug Bashmiel B'Martem Mishmai Darav, Taida, another raya, Hatova Maitiv Lav Deraisa, Sherai Pesayach Bo Beburach, Va'ain Choysim Bo Beburach. It is a brucha that begins with burach and does not have a chasima at the end. Kedetanya, we see in the Brachos what are the rules for determining which bruchas begin with a brucha and have a chasima and which do not. Kol bruchas kilum poisayich ben beburach. All bruchas begin with burach, v'choysim ben beburach, and end with another chasima of burach. Chitz, except for berachas apayris. Berachas apayris, or in general bruchas on food, berachas on mitzvahs. Rasha's explanation for these two is that the reason a brucha should begin with a burach and end with a burach is because usually, like as with Shmoyne Esrei, you begin with hoidua, you have a tefillah, and then you have to finish again with hoidua. Berachas apayros and berachas mitzvahs never leave the topic of hoidua. You from beginning to end, you're always being moida, so you never have to recap and return to berachas hoidua. Longer tefillahs, you interrupt, so you have to get back to the subject. Another example is bucha smicha lechaverta, a bucha that is smicha lechaverta, that is meant to be said after another bucha. Again, according to the same principle, you already were in the middle of being moida, there's no reason to start again with a hoidua. And the last bucha of Krishma, this means emes v'yatziv or emes v'minu, which the Rishonim say is just actually a special example of a bucha smicha lechaveta, because it's an extension of the buchas Krishma of before Krishma. Yesh mehen, some of these exceptions, yesh men shepesayich ben bebuach v'ayin chosim bebuach, they begin with a buach and they don't end with a buach. Yesh men shechosim ben bebuach v'ayin pesayich bebuach. Now, this is where the Braisa ends. And Rishonim at length discuss all the examples of buchas that are exceptions to this and why they're exceptions, and we will not get into the subject because it is very long. But a tova maitiv pesayich bebuach v'ayin chosim bebuach, and doesn't end with a buach, which really it shouldn't. If it's part of benching, it should be a bucha smicha lechaverta, and it should only have a chasima bebuach. It shouldn't begin with a buach. So you can see from this, the hatova maitiv wasn't meant to be considered as part of benching. From this we see it's a bucha on its own, so obviously it's not deraisa because it wasn't considered part of the first three buchas deraisa. There's actually a machlokes rishonim, if it's not part of benching, which of these categories does it belong to? I believe...
I'm sure they're going to get into who wrote the Nesachim.
That's in Daf Memtes, I think. Yeah.
I just want to comment that if Moshe Rabbeinu only wrote the first parsha of benching, so what makes anything else a derisa? He accomplished all the derisas, we should presume. Right?
There's a discussion of the Rishonim. I recall correctly, I once heard a whole shiur from someone who knows the sugya well. I believe the usual consensus is that originally the other themes of benching the Arachi of the Raisa were included in the earlier buchas. As time went on, every time someone was masakin a new bucha, he took a theme from one of the earlier buchas, separated it, and made it its own bucha. But that all the themes that you have to mention in benching the Raisa would until then be included in whatever buchas existed before that.
So that first parsha is not purely
according to this shit, yeah. There would have been some reference to Al Uretz Al Amuzin in
no, because he wasn't in Eretz
Azon.
Yisrael yet. Moshe Rabbeinu was not in Eretz Yisrael, so he couldn't say that.
Yes, but the Pushat of Mashmus of the Pusik is that Al Uretz Al Amuzin is actually a major part of the chiyuv of benching, and in fact, I believe there's a shitta that holds that it is the not as we usually think of as Azon as the primary bocha of benching, but Al Uretz Al Amuzin is. As you see, v'chaltu v'savatu ivarachtu Hashem legechu al uretz hatovu.
That's once you receive it, but if they weren't kivush the Eretz Yisrael yet, it's not necessary.
I don't know, but there is a discussion in Mefarshim about this in the Sigi there.
We had this with bracha achrona. You constantly have to put in Eretz Yisrael into the bracha. Yeah. Even if you're in Chutzlaret, you got to talk about Eretz Yisrael.
But it was given to us already. Okay, it was promised. It wasn't just promised to us and we never got there. But we're happy to be in.
Also bear in mind that Moshe Rabbeinu's takuna, I believe, is even before Matan Torah. Is by the month. I think Moshe Rabbeinu's takuna v'azan sakol, original takuna v'azan sakol, was before Matan Torah. Perhaps after Matan Torah, he expanded it to include a reference to Al Uretz Al Amuzin. I don't know. I know there is some sort of discussion of the Indian there. So the Gemara moves on to another attempted proof that Atova Maitiv is not the Raisa, even though I think at this point we can say it's pretty much the consensus of the Amayruam. Another proof that Atova Maitiv is not the Raisa. In the Baisa Uvel, you remove it. We see that there was a Nisach benching for Baisa Uvel. What do you say in a Baisa Uvel? Bur Hatova Maitiv. The Buch of Atova Maitiv. Bur Dainamis. No, instead there's a Buch called Bur Dainamis. So the Gemara Atova Maitiv en Dainamis loy. Sorry, Atova Maitiv en Dainamis loy. That is to say, 1 second. Who is to say that one is to exclude the other? You also say Atova Maitiv, so this proof is rejected. and the halucha, as we'll see in the next sigya, you actually say a combination of the two. Ma'azitra ikle lebay Ravashe. Ma'azitra visited Ravashe Isra Mil's Brai. There was a tragedy involving his son. In other words, his son was nifta. That's the girsa here. Pusach Burach. He began and said the buche hatoiva maitiv, burach hatoiva maitiv, kail emes, dayan emes, shofet b'tzedek, lekayach b'mishpat shalot b'lumoy lasses b'kitzoyne, he called the ruch of mishpat. The translation is all straightforward. Shahakol shaloi v'anachni amay v'avudav ibakol anachni chayuv loydesloy. And in everything we are mechiyev to give hoidua for him. We find in many places in Chazal that the word hakol is we saw one example of this was Yotze. Hakol is often a euphemism. When we want to be mevurach alaru, but we don't want to explicitly mention that we're thanking the Eibishter for bad things, we refer to it as hakol, everything. Even that is what we want to, the things we would prefer, and the things that we would rather not happen. Goide perutas b'Yisrael, the one who mends breaches in Yisrael, he yigdar es apir tzvah zois, b'Yisrael l'chaim.
That's Shakol near Bidvari follows suit as well. We say Hakol, Shehakol.
The examples that I was thinking of is the Mefoshat Tefillah say in Moedim ve'al kilon, or in benching Noidluchu ve'al hakol. If you look, we've basically enumerated everything we can thank the Eibishter for, and then we say and for everything. What's the and for everything? Even the things that aren't good, that we don't want to mention explicitly. But the classic example is Yotzor, Hakol, which is actually a reference to a pusik where it says Ru. But instead we say Hakol, not to mention Ru specifically in our Nesach Tefillah. So in any case, here we see a Nesach which actually combines Hatov HaMaitiv with Bur Dayan Emes into a special Nesach for benching. I don't think Ashkenazim say this Buch nowadays, though I'm not sure. I've never seen it being said, but I don't think it's even printed in Ashkenazi Sedirim, while Svadi Sedirim do have this bucha being said by Vaisov. Here, this short two-line Gemura, its interpretation depends on the 3 or 4 way Machlokes Rishonim from Umad Aleph. Let's stick to Rashi and Tosfos. According to Rashi, according to Rashi, this refers to someone who waited for other people to make zimun and bench, and wishes now to bench himself. L'haichen hi choize, to which part of benching does he continue? After all, he was yotze part of benching, zimun and perhaps and hazon, if we paskin like Rav Shashis. Rav Zvid mishmai dabai uma choize l'rosh. No, he goes back to the beginning. In other words, to hazon, even though he was yotze hazon by zimun according to Rav Shashis, but now that he's benching, he has to say it too. Rabbunan say he goes back to wherever they finished. In other words, he only benches from Noida since he was already Yotz Hazon. Or, according to Tosfos, this is actually a reference to what the Mezaman says at the beginning of benching. Completely different halucha. He says Nevurach Shechal Nimshaloi. They answer Burach Shechal Nimshaloi of Tiva Chayini. And he answers Nevurach Shechal Nimshaloi of Tiva Chayini. I'm not sure what the first shittu would mean according to Tosfos. And again, the halucha is you go back to the place that you finished. You were saying, sorry? Now we go into the subject of the proper order of things by a meal, especially according to the customs of the time of the Gemara. So the Rosh Gelisa, who after all was the representative of the Jews to the Persian government, and therefore knew their customs and had to spend time with them. So he said to Rav Shashis, even though you are old, the Persians, in the proper manners of the meal, are more experienced than you are. And he described the customs of the Persians by their meals. We find in general that Chazal praised the Persians for their clean eating habits and so on. Bisman shel shtay mitas, when there are 2 beds or couches, I think is the usual translation. Gudel, the chush of a person by the Sida, Maisa Barosh, he lays himself down first on the couch. V'shayni loy, and the second in rank to him, Lamal Lahaimeni, goes to the couch towards his head. In other words, since they would lean on their left sides to keep their right hands free, and sakun and basida and so on, this means that he would go to the bed to the person's right, that is, to the left of those who are facing him. This is as so to speak, above the gudel shabasida. Is manchem shulish when there are three. Gudel meiser beemtza. The chushav one goes in the middle. Shiny loy, the second in rank to him. Lema lahaimeni, to the bed behind him, so to speak. Shlisha loy lemata haimeni, and the third in rank below him. That is in front of him, towards his feet. Umalai asked Rav Shashis told Rosh Chalisa v'chibur ishti'i bahadai mataris teritza v'Yusuf imishtu bahadai. When they want to speak with each other, that is, when the highest in rank wishes to speak with the one below him in rank, does he have to sit up to be able to speak since he's behind him? Umalai, he told him shana parsua de machvalai b'muchak. So if the second in rank is sitting so that his feet are behind the one above him in rank's head, if the highest in rank wishes to speak to the second in rank, he'll have to sit up to be able to see him, since he is behind him. So he answered that Shana Parsua, the Persians are different. They gesticulate while speaking, and they can understand each other that way without having to actually face each other.
What do they do?
They use their hands.
Sign language.
So it isn't that necessary that he should sit up to speak clearly, face him.
So I'm not sure I understand the configuration. They're all lying down on a bed.
There are three couches.
Three couches in which
And they are not necessarily, but I think practically speaking they were, and they sort of overlap in their positions. That is, the feet of the rightmost bed are somewhat behind the center bed, and the feet of the center bed are behind the last bed, so that the center bed has one person at his head behind him.
But the person's feet.
The person's feet are behind his head, and the other bed, the person's head at his feet. And
this is praiseworthy.
Yeah.
Speak to somebody's feet.
At least you're facing him, in a sense.
You're not, but he's
they were somewhat curved, or at least your head is at least facing his face while.
Well, you're leaning, so it's not quite a U, but it's a circle.
They're on their angle, I think.
Incidentally,
and the beds also could have been angled. They're not propped up, but they're sloped.
Right.
The full dining room setting in the times of the Romans and the Persians was three couches, which three couches could sometimes seat up to 9 people, but this is actually traklin that we find in the Gemara, which is really refers to the fancy dining room of that was found in rich houses. It comes from the word triclinium, which means the room of 3 beds in Latin. That was the full setup, three beds arranged in one dining room.
It's ironic that they call a dining room based on the amount of beds that are inside.
Yeah, that was the full setup. There really was no situation in which you could not invite more than you could not have more than 9 guests, or rather 8 guests at a full meal who would sit with you equally in rank. I think they would have in a side room people of lower rank. Yeah.
And that's in Kenu. That's the whole Shari Gemara. If they see him, they don't see him.
I guess in the pause, not in the trakla. Yeah. Ma'im Rishonim, Ma'ichem Maschilim. So he asked them, where do they begin with Ma'im Rishonim? After they were into cleanliness, where do they begin? How do they begin with washing their hands? Umalai Minagudel. They begin with the greatest one, the most chushav one. There washes Ma'im Rishonim first. The chusha person by the Seder sits and washes his hands and sits quietly with no food while he waits for everyone else to wash. They bring the small table, the individual table, before him immediately after he washes, so that he doesn't have to wait for the others to begin to eat. The Ma'im Achronim, which again, this is something that even the Persians would do at the time. Where do they begin? They begin from the lowest in rank. As we'll see, there's less of an inyan of kibbud with Ma'im Achronim, which were primarily meant to have your hands clean from the food after eating. The Gudel Yusuf Yudav is a hummus. The chushav one sits, after all, they finished eating, the tables are removed, and the chushav one sits with dirty hands ad shenoitlen kilo until everyone else washes. He said to him, they don't remove the table from the chushav one until the water reaches him. So he's still sitting as if he is eating in front of his table, and his hands aren't exposed until they bring mayim achonim to him. Rav Shaisha said, Anu misneti yadane. When it comes to matters of the Seder, I know a Braisa, not Persians. And we'll see, it's almost, but not quite, the same. What is the Seder of a Seder by a Seder? When there are two mitzvahs, Gudel Maise Barosh, the Chushav one sits down first, V'shayni loy lemata haimeni. I believe this is different. Yes, his second in rank is at his feet. Thus, it comes out that he is to the right. Also couches, yeah. Apparently, with two, it's less of a problem, though I'm not entirely sure why. When there are three, the chushav one sits. Not Brachos doesn't mean at the head of the three, because as we'll see, the Braisa agrees that he sits in the middle, but it means he sits down first. Shayni loy l'mal hameni, the second in rank above him. The third below him. Ma'im Rishonim, I believe this setup is the same. Though it's Rav Shaisha apparently did not have the problem. The Brachos discusses this. Ma'im Rishonim maschilim and agudel. Ma'im Rishonim begin from the highest in rank. Ma'im Achonim, almost the same, but a slight difference. Bismansha and high, if there are 5 people eating, maschilim and agudel, you begin with the greatest. He does Ma'im Achonim first. Bismansha and Maya, if there are 100, or in fact anything more than 5, maschilim and akutin, you begin with the smallest. Ad shemagi and aitel high, until you reach the last 5. And then you give Ma'im Achonim to the greatest. Now, why, according to the Braisa, do you change the order? The Braisa agrees in principle that lower people in rank should wash Ma'im Achonim first. Why do you switch for the last 5? This is because there is an inyan of being machabed, the first of the last set, which the Braisa held is 5. I haven't seen an explanation for this. The first of the last set should have Brachos and Musa. And the Mukim Shemayim Achonim Chazrin, that to whom the Mayim Achonim return for the last round, the Sham Bucha Chazeris, there goes the Bucha. Messiah L'Rav, Dom Rav Chia Barash Rav, Rav Chia Barash said in the name of Rav, Kol HaNoit L'Yudah B'Achonim Trille, He Mezim L'Bucha. Whoever washes Mayim Achonim first, or at least first of the last group, He Mezim L'Bucha, he is the one who is designated for Brachos and Musa.
So Yadav B'Achroina is first of Mayim
Achonim, or first of the last set of Mayim Achonim.
Now, when you said about Mayim Rishonim that whoever is mechubed, let's say today when we don't bring the water, so who should wash first? Should the father go and wash first and then wait?
Part of the reason here is hefsek. We don't want to be mafsik. That's why we hold that the gudel does not go first, because in that case there's a big hefsek between Mayim Achonim and benching. The point is that the person who benches should not have a particularly long hefsek.
The person benching should not have a long hefsek.
Yeah.
The bracha rishonim. I'm talking about the bracha rishonim for a moitzi. So a moitzi here, it's the first person. They come and bring him Mayim Rishonim. Now he's got to wait till everybody else washes, right? Yeah, so there is a hefsek. There is a hefsek.
Yeah, there is a hefsek. We're less machmid on hefsek by Netilas Yadayim than by Mayim Achonim. Many of the haluchas of hefsek are stricter by Mayim Achonim than, at least time-wise.
And would the same be also for if you're not bringing water? In other words, now today we go into the kitchen to wash, or somewhere else in the living dining room.
L'katchila, really, you're supposed to avoid a shiur of more than 22 amos, I believe, between Mayim Achonim and benching. In practice, that isn't always possible, but especially by chasnas, yeah.
But I'm talking about Mayim Rishonim.
There also is that shiur l'katchila, but it's not as important.
No, I was getting at who washes first.
I don't know. I haven't seen the discussion of it. Let's see a little bit further. There are long sugis in the next 2 dafim, so if I can get to the beginning of Umad Aleph, let's aim for that. Now the Gemara mentions a story that was already mentioned before, but to bring a different raya from it. Rav and his uncle Rav Chia were sitting at a Sida Kamai the Rebbe in front of their common Rebbe, Rabbi Yakudish. Rebbe told Rav, who was very young then, Kim Mush Yudach, stand up and wash your hands. Chazi the Kemirsis, Chazi Rav Chia the Kemirsis. Rav Chia saw that Rav was frightened by Rebbe's request. It didn't occur to him that Rebbe was being in Mechabed with benching, and he thought this is some sort of message of Missa. Omalai Bar Pachse, son of the great ones, this is Rav Chia's nickname for Rav, he's telling you to get ready for benching. In other words, you should wash my machonim first because he wants you to bench. That's why he told you to wash. Tuna Rabunan, now that we were discussing Kibidim, there's no Indian of being Mechaba the Gudel, Loy Bedruchim, neither when traveling, Loy Bekshurim, neither when waiting to cross a bridge, Loy B'daim is a hummus, nor with dirty hands. In other words, by my machonim, there's no chashivas of letting the chushav go first. Except, as we see, there's an Indian of giving the last 5. Again, this is some sort of cheshbon that he should be ready for benching once everyone else washes my machonim. Reuven v'Abaye, the Gemara gives an example of this. Reuven v'Abaye, Reuven who came from Eretz Yisrael, and Abaye who from Eretz Yisrael to Bovel, and Abaye who lived in Bovel, have a ka'ozle be'orche. They were going on a road. Kod my chamere de Reuven l'Abaye. Reuven's chamor went ahead of Abaye's. He didn't say let the master go. In other words, he wasn't mechabed him to go first on this path, which was too narrow for 2 donkeys. Since this Talmud Chacham came from Eretz Yisrael, Gasla Datai, he became a Balgava. This solution implies that Reuven originally came from Eretz Yisrael, but I've checked and that's not at all agreed upon. It seems that Reuven actually always lived in Eretz Yisrael. In any case, this Talmud Chacham Eretz Yisrael became a Balgava, that he wasn't Mechabed me to go first. Abaye was much older than Reuven. When they came to the door of the Shiel, then Reuven was Mechabed Abaye, let the Rebbe go first. And until now I wasn't the Rebbe. And this is what Rabbi Yochanan said. There's no Indian of being Mechabed a chush of a person to go first, only by a door that has a mezuzah. By Saknesis, by Medrash, the less by mezuzah. Meikir Adin, by Saknesis, by Medrash, I'm not so sure about. But by Saknesis, Meikir Adin is not Mechiv mezuzah. The less by mezuzah, you'll say that you aren't Mechabed, and here you're talking about a by Saknesis, and he was Mechabed him to go first. I'm Mechabed. It means by a door that can have a mezuzah. In other words, when it comes to an actual entrance to a house as opposed to roads, there are no mezuzahs on roads. Or by Samechitz. But yeah, I think in by Sakisa there's another sigi that says the same thing. By Saknesis doesn't have a chi of mezuzah. Meikir Adin. A true by Saknesis doesn't. A true bicyclesis doesn't have a chiv mezuzah. By some medrash, I'm confused because.
In the article, he says that synagogue study rules do not require.
I remember the reason for bicyclesis. I don't remember the reason for bicymedrash. Bicyclesis is making it in a place that's not rui for anything but davening. A true bicyclesis. But bicymedrash, a Talmud Chacham is allowed to eat the bicymedrash. So I'm not allowed to eat, allowed to sleep. So I'm not sure why it's not mechiv mezuzah. Let's just get to Rabunan.
Synagogues and study halls which are not used for.
Okay. Umar Vida Brayder Rav Shmuel Bar Shailes Mishmai Rav. Rabbi Yehuda son of Shmuel Bar Shailes said in the name of Rav, Eine Mesibim Reshu and Lechol Klim Ad Sheyitam HaBetzayah. The Mesibim, those that are gathered, are not allowed to eat or lit oim. We'll see in a minute until the Betzayah eats, until he who has hamotzi and breaks the bread eats. Rav Safra, Yosef Rav Safra v'koma litoim. Rav Safra said this member with the words litoim. Yosef Rav Safra v'koma litoim itma. The words should be litoim. Now sometimes in halucha there's a difference between achile and te'ime, but here when we're referring to a sida, it makes no difference to halucha which one you say, to eat or to taste. The ma'inaf kemina shechayv udem loim b'lushan rabbi. A person should choose the words of his rebbe even when it doesn't make enough kemina halucha. He should stick to that lushan. All right, we'll stop here. Sorry.